Hey guys, Miss Warren here. Today I'm continuing on the Pointillism worksheet that I have us working on in class here. Um, so I was in the process of mixing secondary colors, which are made of two primary colors. This one's a tertiary. I just kind of wanted us to get a little experience with that. And then some neutral colors over here. We already kind of worked on creating a gradient from light to dark here with a hue or the regular color in the middle, and then adding more and more black to create shades and more white to create tints. I'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, so the first thing I think I'm going to do here, or the next thing I'm going to do here, is I'm going to mix a violet. So violet is a secondary color, which means you have to mix two of the primary colors to make it. Do y'all remember what you would use to make a violet? Red and blue. Now, we talked about color mixing previously, and just as a reminder, you always want to start with your lightest color. Now, red is ever so slightly lighter than blue, so I'm going to start with a pile of red. I'm going to leave a little clean over here because I want to still make an orange, and I don't want to get purple in my orange. So there we have a red, and we're going to add a small amount of blue to this pile of red until we get a nice violet. A little bit on the red violet side, and you might have to kind of like look at what it looks like at the edge because it's so dark it's kind of hard to see in the middle. You get it just a touch more blue to get a nice even purple. Sometimes the purple gets so dark you need to add just a touch of white to it to really be able to see the true shade of the color. So I'm going to make a little bit of white in there just to see we've got a good even violet or purple. Okay, so I've got a Q-tip full there, and I'm going to fill this area with the kind of dotted texture we've been talking about since we're going to be doing a pointillism still life. Pointillism is made of dots, and often the dots next to each other are different colors. A little bit more. Now it's important that you don't spread out your color mixing too far on your palette because then the colors tend to dry out. I try to keep it in one little kind of centralized spot. And it's okay for this particular technique if your color isn't 100% even. You can see some areas that have a little more red in them, some areas that have a little more blue in them, and that's kind of goes with the nature of pointillism, is that you'll see multiple colors in one area. Okay, so there we have our violet. Now, we're gonna mix some neutral colors. So a gold is kind of just a slightly neutralized darker yellow. So I know that we're gonna start with a yellow. Let me grab a clean Q-tip. So I have a pile of yellow over here. Yellow is our lightest color, so we know we're going to start with that. What will we add a little bit of to neutralize this yellow to calm it down? What is it the opposite of on the color wheel? If you said violet, you would be correct. Now violet is way darker than yellow, so we're only going to use a tiny, tiny bit. I'm going to mix it in, and you can see already it's starting to make a kind of brown, yellow, gold color. I'm going to get just a little bit more. I'm going to mix it off to the side here because I don't want to get too dark. There we go. I never put the dark color all the way in the center of what I'm mixing because I don't want it to get too dark. So, because that's like more like a brown, that's a shade darker than what we want. Okay, so this looks like a nice gold kind of mustard color to me. So if you ever want to neutralize a color, calm it down a little bit, make it more like a brown or or a calmed down version of a color. You just add the complement or the opposite color to it. Now I'm going to quickly make an orange. I'm going to get a clean Q-tip. So over here we have orange. I'm going to grab yet again a pile of yellow because that's one of the primary colors that goes into that secondary color. Then I'm going to grab a small amount of red and mix it in with that yellow. See how quickly that red overtakes that yellow? Now here I've got a lot of red in there, and that's kind of looks more like a red orange to me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in the red orange area with this darker color. I just wanted y'all to see what a tertiary, do one example of a tertiary color. A tertiary color is a color when you mix a primary and a secondary color together. Get a little more red in this red orange. And yet again with pointillism, the technique we're using, it doesn't matter so much that an area has exactly all the same shade, because we kind of want to see a little bit of that texture in there. You can see some areas have a little more red in them, some have a little more orange in them, and we've got red orange. Okay, I'm gonna get a little more yellow in this edge here to make a good, even, regular orange. Get a little bit more, because that yellow is really light. And notice I'm not mixing it right in the middle of the pile, I'm mixing it at the edge, and I'm just grabbing a little bit more of the darker color as needed. That looks like a good orange to me. Your orange should be clearly more yellow in color than your red orange. Okay, so there I have my secondary colors and a tertiary color. Now I'm gonna go over here to the brown. We have an olive green, we have a gold. Now we're gonna mix, for our olive green, we mixed we mixed a little bit of red into our green. For our gold, we mixed a little bit of violet into our yellow. And now guess what two complementary colors we're going to be mixing for brown? We're going to be doing orange and blue. Now orange is our lighter color, so you always want to start with a big pile of orange. Then I'm going to add a small amount of blue. Now if when I mix it, it becomes green, that means I have too much yellow. If it becomes too orangey red still, that means I have too much yellow, or not too much yellow, too much red in it. See how this, and now if it's becoming green, I have too much yellow and not enough red. Whenever it's too much of one color, you add a little bit more of its opposite. So because it's looking a little bit green, I'm gonna add a little more red to it. Get a little bit more of that red mixed in. Still looking a little bit green. I must have put a little bit too much blue in there. So I'm going to grab a little more red, and I'm gonna grab a little more yellow to kind of lighten it up. There we go, I'm getting the color I want right in the middle there. Brown is pretty challenging. If you want a warm brown, you're gonna have more red and yellow in it. If you want a cool brown, you'll probably have a little bit more blue or green in it. When you have more green in a brown, it's called an olive brown. When you have more red in a brown, it's called a red brown. If it starts looking purple, you need to add more yellow to it. I think that looks good. It looks like a pretty warm brown. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint that in. Now, if you were doing a bone color or a white creamy color, you could add a very small amount of this brown or a very small amount of the gold into a large pile of white to get like a cream or a bone color. So if I were doing a bone, this would be like, or a magnolia flower, this would be like the color of the shadow here. And I would add a lot of white. Let me just show you that, because I know that a lot of y'all drew for your still life skulls and the cow skull. I'm gonna grab a big pile of white and just use the leftover that was on my Q-tip. And there you get kind of like a warm bonish color here at the top. Or you could even take that gold that we had earlier and add, here, let me kind of wipe out the extra because we don't want too much. You just want a tiny, tiny bit in there and a lot of white. And you mix that and it becomes kind of the color of like bone or like the shadow, a little bit of cream color to it. So because very rarely is a bone just stark white. I think I like the brown mixed with the white a little bit better for the shades of bone color. So there you have some bone colors. Now gray, there's two ways to make gray. You can use black and white, and that's like the normal way. And this one's way is a little bit more challenging, but if you're low on black and white, you can actually mix green and red. If you get it in the right proportion, it will neutralize each other enough to get a gray. So I'm gonna grab a pile of yellow. Let's give that an attempt. And if it gives us too much trouble, we can just use the black and white. Okay, so now it's turning brown. So I know I need to cool it down with some blue. Now it's a little bit green. Oh, there it's turning a little bit gray. If you make gray like this, you'll end up with a very cool gray. It will look a little bit bluish or a little bit greenish. Put a little bit of yellow in there. If it turns too green, we'll put a little bit of red. Here we go. Grab a little more purple. Okay, so this would be about as close to a grayish color. That's a pretty warm gray. Just a touch more blue. There we go. So if you didn't have black and white, this is how you could make something very close to gray. Very neutral color. Now, if you just wanted to do black and white, you just get black and white, use a little more white than black, and that makes an even more neutral gray. I'll put them side by side so you can kind of see them on here. See, it's a little bit cooler. It's still pretty neutral. And if you wanted your gray to be a little bit warm, you could add other colors to it. That's kind of the advantage to color mixing here. Okay, so there we have our secondary, one tertiary, and neutral colors. So I'd like y'all to go ahead and give this a try, and I look forward to seeing your work.